Derek, from your 17th anniversary as a manager. Now, started obviously 36-year-old at St Johnstone, and over the period you've League Cup with Aberdeen, 2 championships, St Johnstone, Kilmarnock. 4 years in a row you were second with Aberdeen. 3 times runners-up in cup finals, all to Brendan Rodgers. And now obviously top 4 in Europe at Kilmarnock. How do you look on your time as a manager? How would you rate what you've done so far, Derek?
Look, it's hard. I think.
Is there frustration, or there could have been more, or is that?
No, I think I've improved. Genuinely feel I've improved every club I've been into. You know, and sometimes a manager can only be good as a supporter and about him. You know, you've got to get. I think it's tough. Being a manager can be challenging. I look at from the outside looking in, I see other managers do it, and I hear their interviews, and I think that he's struggling a wee bit there, and maybe not quite getting the same support. I was fortunate that I got off to a good start, as we mentioned, and Jeff Brown saw something in me that he thought I could be his next manager. You know, even the thing with Jeff, we'd won the Challenge Cup in the fight this Sunday against Dunfermline. It was Stephen Kenny's team. Killie had left, so it was Sandy Stewart and had took the team, Killie's assistant. And I remember with good celebrations back at the club, and first trophy St Johnstone had ever won back then. No, now obviously. And then the Monday morning we were a day off, so Stuart Duff had phoned me, the chief executive, and said, "Look, would you be able to take training this week?" Obviously Owen's left. Killie had kept me in the loop with things anyway. And I said, "No, that's fine." And then he said, "We just need to get a manager." I said, "That's fine." And then he said, "Have you thought about it yourself?" And I said, I genuinely hadn't. I mean, I'd done all my coaching badges. I'd done my B licence and my A licence at 22 and 23. I was taking the reserves at St Johnstone. But I genuinely wasn't thinking of applying for it. And he says, "I think you should think about it." And I said, "Right, okay." And then he said, "Jeff wants you up for a chat at 7 o'clock tonight." So up at the stadium. So I had my day off, headed up. And on the 6:30 news, local news, it says, St Johnstone have set a press conference for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to unveil their new manager. And I'm thinking, what's he doing? So I more or less went in, and he told me, he says, "You're our new manager." He said, "You're absolutely ready for it. I've watched you how you carry yourself, you've got the respect to the players." So that was...
So you had no choice to make.
And I didn't have a lot of interaction with the chairman then.
Did you even officially accept it, Derek?
Well, I did. I accepted it right away as player manager, obviously. So I says, "Did my wages go up?" And he says, "No, we'll talk about that." And I was up at his last game there. I went up to the St Johnstone Aberdeen game. The club had invited me up. Jeff had invited me up as a guest. And, you know, and I said to him, I was so grateful for the grounding really and the support. You know, they kind of helped me and took away certain things away from me so I could just concentrate and doing the job, and be forever grateful. So we've got St Johnstone up, established ourselves in top 6, get the opportunity to go to Bristol. And I think back, I had a couple of other opportunities to move for St Johnstone before Bristol, but I took Bristol because I thought that it might not come round again, the championship. It was the wrong move probably, but they're bottom of the league at the time. They hadn't won a home game for donkeys, for months.
You thinking it could only get better?
Well, possibly. I think I was their 5th manager in 4 years, which maybe tells you about the situation. And when we go down, there's maybe about 4 or 5 different managers signings in the building, which is never healthy, and too many players. And my remit was to keep the team up, and we kept them up. You know, and that was a real highlight, you know, because from a really desperate situation, we managed to stay in the championship. Looking back now, maybe if I was a more senior manager, I would have been kicking and screaming a wee bit more to shape the squad up in the summer. We had too many players under contract. The club never moved on the players. That's why when you get the benefit of hindsight, and then when I go to Aberdeen, and with 14 players out of contract, I kept 1 player, Josh McINNES, and I released 13. I just wanted a fresh slate and start again to make it my team. And I might not have approached it that way if I hadn't had my fingers burnt at Bristol City. So, but we brought through young players at Bristol City, Bobby Reid, Joe Bryan. They moved for millions of pounds. Albert Adoma, Yannick Velassi, boys who went on to have fantastic careers. And the club asked me to reduce the wage bill for financial fair play. Even then it was hitting hard. we were paying players, we were paying £2,000 a week players, £6,000 a week players, 10 grand a week players, 15. The club was hemorrhaging money. So it was a learning curve for that point of view. And
So, I mean, I can imagine how you were feeling, but so when you get the sack, in your own kind of words, how did that hit you?
do you know what?
That'd have been the first sack.
Do you know the funny story? I don't know if I've ever
Managerial
mentioned this. So Big Levine was done. He'd just been sacked for Scotland, and I phoned him up and I says, "Look, do you want to come down if you're at loose end? Come down and watch training for a few days, take in the game." We're playing Leicester in January. I says, "Just get away," and he went, "Great." So he came down, booked himself into a hotel. I like Big Craig. Don't like him that much to invite him to my house, but he'll like that. So we're having 2 or 3 days at training. At no point did I think that was a must-win game at the weekend. Sometimes you feel that that's coming, but the board had told me, listen, if you sort out the mess, get rid of the high earners, if we go down with Derek McInnes, it's something that has to be done. We've fought with relegation for the last few years. We'll come back with Derek McInnes. That was a chat. Right. So Craig was watched the game, and he's like that to me. I was actually driving up because of the schedule we'd had. I was actually going to be off on the Monday, so I had my car. And I says, I was going to drive up. So he jumped in for a lift. So we lost to Leicester City. The Leicester City team that won the league, they were a good team then. So we're driving. We're about 5-10 minutes go through Bristol Town Centre, and Doc comes up on my phone, and he's like, the chairman's been looking for you. He's asking if you could come back to the club to see you. And I said, all right. I says, the new? And he went, aye, I think he's wanting to see the new. And I said, right, no problem. So hung up, and Big Levine turns around and went, definitely the sack, 100%, right? He says, and I says, I think it might be. And he went, 100%. So we drove back to the club.
That was nice and tactful of him.
I know. So drive into the club. Craig sits and he says, I'll sit here, you'll not be long. So goes in, and right enough, said my bit with the wee retort back and things and that. So that was fine. But that was a kind of bit of, not relief, but I remember thinking, well, do you know what? I really want to work for these types of people who gave me their word on certain things and all the rest of it. So drove back up, had a few weeks off, and I remember. No. I remember speaking to Walter about it, and he told me to take the benefit of it and things like that. And he said, just get ready for your next job. He says, that's what it is. Take the rest, but be ready for your next job. It's all about getting yourself more prepared. And I remember I went back down to meet Doc, because Doc was down in Bristol, and I went down to Clare, my flat, met him for lunch, and I was parking the car, and I got a call for Jeff Brown, and he's like, you all right? And I said, aye. He says, you fancy that Aberdeen job? He says, I had a chat with Stuart Milne, and I said, all right. He says, I've told him he should be the next manager, and he says, I think he might want to speak to you in the next few weeks, so just to mark your card. So that was basically, I think I was 6 or 7 weeks out, and I managed to speak to Aberdeen, and what a brilliant decision that was. I think I was the right manager for them at the time. Aberdeen was definitely the right club for me. Once I met Stuart and the board, although it must have been about 4 interviews, Stuart asked me to speak to every director. There was quite a few directors then. I still say to him, I jumped through all the sorts of hoops to get the job, but once I got in the job, I really felt at home, felt it was a club that could match what I wanted, the demand, and we went with it, and absolutely brilliant time. So in answer to your question, I feel we've improved every club I've been at. The times at Aberdeen, 4 second place finishes, if you listen to the people maybe say, aye, but Rangers weren't in it, they were for 2 of the years.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't, Derek.
We actually should have had 5 second place. If Stephen McLean, the referee, had does his job right in the last game of the season against Mother, it would have been 5 second place finishes. And we always...
Derek, go over it.
No.
Go over it.
No. And I still tell him. So we've had, we had a few, I think we got to about 11 or 12 semi-finals. We were always champing at the door. And
be honest, if it wasn't for Brendan, you'd had a couple of more trophies.
Well, the fact of the matter is we would have.
But it was an astounding Celtic team at that time.
They were, but we still had other opportunities. I remember the year we won the League Cup. St Johnstone beat us at Ibrox in the semi-final, and it was a game that we were well in charge of, winning 1-0.
That was gut-wrenching for you, that one, wasn't it?
And it was 2 goals like that. To be fair, Tommy made a wee change, put 2 strikers up. We just, before we knew it, we'd run out of time, and it was a game where we were by far the better team, with the better chances, should have went 2-0 up. Before you know it, that's semi-finals for you, you know, and you've got to see them through regardless. And so there's been missed opportunities, and of course that.
I think you're on record actually. That's the only frustration for you. That it was only one trophy, wasn't it?
Aye.
You felt there was so much more in that. Players,
Yeah, yeah, because like supporters, I mean, how do you judge success? What tangible success is silverware, but there was loads of other successes, on-pitch performance, bringing millions of pounds in every year from performance, developing young players, selling young players on, driving and being a big part of delivering the training ground as well, and trying to get Aberdeen forward. But there was loads of other aspects where you could actually judge it as a successful period, and you know, I think I would like to have won more trophies certainly, but it wasn't for the want of trying, trust me.
See, when through your managerial career, Derek, see when you make a decision, whether it's about your future or whether it's about signings or team selection, anything, do you do it with conviction that once you've done it, there's no regrets, there's no kind of hindsight in it, and once you know it, you're certain that's it, and
I think you've got to. You're talking about team selection and formation. You've got to. If I'm not convinced, how can I convince my players? So you've got to be convinced with it. Sometimes you can still sleep on it. I like to name my team on a Friday if I can, or the day before a game, because that's the way I like as a player. I like to know if I was playing or no and prepare. Sometimes you sleep on it because that's just the way it is, and you want to wake up. I always remember Walter used to always say, like, he would sleep in loads of little things and wake up and go with his gut feeling a lot of time on a Saturday morning. And there's other managers who, Sir Alex has been on record and saying, he says, no, I need to be the best player on a Saturday. The manager has to be the best player. So he needs a good night's sleep. So he says, always settle on your team on a Friday. So I think that's where I've got to, maybe more settled, more kind of ready with an idea of my team. Maybe last season we get the benefit of that. There was the same 8, 9, 10 players played every week, more or less. But sometimes you have to change with injuries and the like.
I wonder if you feel extremely fortunate that I think the formative years as a player, you had 3 particularly strong managers and really, top football people. Alan McGraw, you Walter, then obviously you Advocaat. I mean, Alan McGraw, I think 15 to 24. Mm-hmm. You worked with 85 to 96. Morton legend. For you, how important was he at that stage of your career? Maybe even as a person as well, Derek?
Yeah, I couldn't talk highly enough of him as a manager who, and managers, you know, any young player wants to trust their manager. And at a club like Morton, I was fortunate enough that when he saw me at 16, he put me in with the first team, maybe give me my Premier League debut at 16, my first full debut at Easter Road. And he was the team was just getting relegated, but was building for next season. And I actually think about it, looking back, that he made me his captain at 20 years of age, but he played me week in, week out at 16, 17, 18, 19, good and bad. And that was the days before video analysis and sitting down, but he would, I've said this before, he would shout you up to his office, sit, he'd have a cup of tea, more than one cup of tea, and just talk about the game, just through recollection and what you're thinking about here. And he'd maybe dissect your game if you had a bad game and say, but he would go again Saturday. So he would always leave you with a positive, and that was like, you were never no playing kind of thing. And it was so important. But even the time, you know, I think about, I've even got it up my board now, and I say to my staff all the time, make them feel important, make the players feel important. And I always think I responded to the managers who actually gave a shit about me, to be honest. Managers who actually really cared for me and put the work into me, and whether it was a 5 or 10 minute conversation with their arm around your shoulder, walking around the training pitch or whatever, and focus on what you could do, know what you couldn't do. And I always remember how that made me feel as a player. So I'm always conscious, like my own players, when I come this side of it now, I always try and be honest with the players if I'm late, telling them why they've been left out or reasons why they've not been playing, because as a player, you remember the managers that were genuine and the ones that weren't. But the ones who actually really invest in you, I think you get it back. I think if you show the player, if you show them the long-term rewards, the short-term rewards is easier, but the longer-term rewards, the ability to maybe become an internationalist, earn a certain amount of money, protect your family going forward, having a lifestyle that if you can try and show that you're trying to help them to get there. And you look at the Scotland team and boys that we've worked with, like Ferguson and McLean's and Ryan Jacks has done well, Ryan Christie, Scott McINNES, you know, boys that you've been able to try and...
James Madison.
He was, they were always getting there, James was. But for instance, it's like, the job's so rewarding, but at the same token, it's like, it's rewarding in different ways, if you know what I mean. And I always remembered how managers, other managers as well, without naming them, that how you didn't want to be treated. Do you know what I mean? And well, I mean, Advocaat's one of them. Advocaat was all about his strongest 11, and he was so clear, the manager, about this is my strongest 11. The rest are well paid to be ready. But you're always seen as...
Was he cold and clinical as opposed to Allan and Walter?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was his way. It was a Dutch way, and fine. Do you know what I mean? That was his way, and he was successful with it. But at the same token, training could be hard because he would normally do his 11v11 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You knew the team for the Saturday early on in the week. So training, sometimes boys need to train for a purpose a lot of the time. But we were well paid, and we were paid to be ready. But he was clear. He knew his starting 11, and he knew if they were ready, if they were fit, that was the team that was playing. Did
Allan almost treat you like a son? Did he? I mean, how did it make him feel to see you then doing well as a manager? Would he message you? Would he phone you?
We were tight. Golfed together. Spoke so often. I've probably seen him more as a dad as well as a son. For me, you know, it was somebody that the relationship was so strong. You know, it was such a sad day when we lost him. I spoke at his funeral when the family asked me to speak. He was just the best.
Still quite emotional for you then?
He was the best of people. He's a magnificent guy, and he was a manager who, time and time again, sold his best players and never once put himself first. Because we've all got egos, and I know when I lose players, and you think, oh, I wish we'd held on to him a bit longer, and you're thinking what you could have done with the player, but he never ever put anybody. He put the player first, the club's next. You know, the money, the club get good money, and himself last. You know what I mean?
He almost like seen you through as boy to man, really, wasn't it? 15 you first, and then 24 you left to go to Rangers. But I take it without Allan, do you think you'd have achieved?
Who knows? I mean, I think for any young player, you need the confidence and the support, really, and from your coaches. I had it really. We all it was Allan and Jackie McNamara were the first two at Morton, then John McMaster, then Peter Cormack, who we've just lost, and
good people
last week. So I always felt I had so much people who believed in me at Morton, which is obviously beneficial. You've still got to go and showcase that. And when I got my move to Rangers, I felt ready for that. But I'm so much to thank so many people. But I mean, I look back, you know, I was always, I think, hard working. I think I got a lot out of my career for what I was as a player. Managed to have some good highlights as a player. But my relationship with Allan and with Walter probably became stronger as I became a manager.
I mean, Walter Smith, I mean, extraordinary man, extraordinary manager.
Mm-hmm.
To go from Allan to then Walter.
And similar in terms of...
As people?
Aye, very similar. Very straight and honest, and says it as it was, and decency written right through them, the two of them.
Yeah. I mean, Walter, from a reporter perspective, I always found Walter quite an intimidating presence, you know. But you know, I was at the wrong end of a few verbal bashings as such. But then afterwards, he was terrific, you know.
Yeah.
There was no grudges held. What he said it when he said it, and that was it. I mean, did you find that as well?
Yeah, I mean, we never really seen that side of the gaffer too often. Obviously, we were a winning team, but he did have his moments, and you know, and he cut the players a lot of slack. But there was also times that if you overstepped it, or there was something that really jarred them that you didn't want to feel the wrath of that. You know, I remember picking McCoist up my first game, and because we lived next to each other, and he said to me on the Friday, he says, "Do you want me to take you in, or you take me in?" I said, "Whatever." And he went, "You get me then, so you can get a so you can get a couple of pints after it." But I remember being late for the first game, but
Never.
because we were meeting at 11:45 for pre-match, and I'm sitting at Coist's house 11:10, pumping the horn. He's giving me a wee hang out the window.
Was it a wind-up?
No, he could afford to be late.
Was it just,
But the gaffer and Archie never knew. No, he could afford to be late because he's Allan McCoist. I'm just in the door 2 minutes. But the gaffer and Archie never knew we were late because we were just in for a pre-match meal up the stairs in the kitchen. But I remember driving from Renfrewshire to Ibrox in no time, hitting just to get there. But you know, I remember just no one to feel wrath. I didn't want to let my managers down, and that's something that stayed with me, whether it was Allan, Walter, Advocaat, Gary Megson, who had a huge influence on me. All my managers, I'd never ever wanted to let them down, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
That's just being professional, is it not?
I know, but
even if you don't like them, it's still you. You're representing yourself here, aren't you?
Yeah, but exactly. But I could. I felt as though there was always better players than me in every team I played in. But I always felt the manager knew that he could get for me and trust us for a manager. I say that to my players all the time. I need to be able to trust you. I need that reliability. I need that certainty for you is what I'm getting. Some days you're better than others, but I need that, and I think that is important. You've got a team that have that kind of characteristic.
I wonder if when you became a manager, it stuck with you when you would be sat in a dressing room at Ibrox and you'd see Walter. You've got a Rangers dressing room, Gascoigne, McCoist, Gough, Gorham, Laudrup, extraordinary egos, pedigrees, you name it, and yet he's in charge of them. Would you recall how he dealt with them and their various issues, etc., and then take it on yourself as a manager? Was there any influence in how he did it?
Yeah, I think even when you go to some of these LMA courses, the League Managers Association, they always talk how to deal with the maverick player, the problem player. We had about 10 mavericks, you know what I mean? But and I think it was such a happy place. I mean, when I look back, we were winning every week. You know what I mean? There was a fun. It's no easy for a team in Glasgow, Rangers, Celtic, if you're on the wrong side of it, and it's difficult. And obviously Rangers are getting the wrong side of that at the minute. But in our time there, we had the better players, with the best manager. We had the biggest budget probably, and we had so much going for us. So when I look back, it was just brilliant. We were living our best lives in terms of winning most weeks. Obviously, from a professional point of view, I wanted to have a bigger impact and play more. Other than the 9-0 season, I never played as many games as I wanted, but and I had a lot of injuries there, but I actually felt it was like brothers. We were all tight, we were all so close, and the majority of the dressing room, although we had loads of foreigners come in through the door, but the majority of the dressing room was Scottish and British. And I think that so the foreigners came in and adapted to us, really, I think. And I think that was quite important with a lot of players that supported the club as well, which was the kind of key dynamic as well within all that. So it was all good times. And I think even then, the foreigners that came into the team were ones that came in, and you mentioned Laudrup, but there was numerous ones that came in and actually added something to the team rather than just loads of foreigners that come in just to supplement the squad. The ones who supplemented the squad was boys like myself and a lot of the Scottish based players.
What I'm about to ask you, I don't mean it as a disrespect, but you know, because clearly Dick Advocaat is a world-renowned manager. I think he still is managing, incredible. But did you not enjoy the Advocaat years? Because it was maybe a different style, it was maybe a harder, colder, kind of more clinical style of being a boss. I
remember the first pre-season. I remember he'd been watching a lot of the games, but obviously because the gaffer was leaving at the end of the season, and we were well aware that the new manager had been watching. I think it had been announced that he had been coming, and I'd been offered a new deal before he came, and it was sanctioned that because the new manager had seen enough in you. So fine, first day of pre-season, totally different pre-season to the Archies, the gaffer and Archies. I mean, we used to go to Choco in Italy, but we'd done about 10 days or 2 weeks at Bellahouston, and it was like fierce, you know. It was proper old school pre-season. I couldn't dare give my players that now because they're too well educated and what's right and what's wrong.
Was it Hoggenfield locked as well?
Aye. So we were battered that first period, and then we'd go to Choco in Italy and get battered again. And then, but when the manager came in, when Advocaat came in, I remember we were the first day of pre-season, and he was shouting over. We were in a running group. It was me and Charlie Miller, and he's going, "Too quick, Miller, slow down." Me Charlie's like to me, "That's the first time any manager's actually told me to slow down." This guy's going to be all right. And it was a slow build up to get your fitness, and there was we were all willing to learn and looking forward to the different types of management. Obviously, I'd only had 2 managers, and I'd been playing about 10, 11 years then. But I had Walter and Allan.
But then Dick comes in, was it stuff like no ketchup? Was there mobile phone, strict rules?
Yeah.
Stuff that at that time you wouldn't
we all ate together at 1:30 sort of thing. There was like routine that was regimented, which was fine. The food was different, training was different, as you'd expect. So no, it was. I liked the training. I liked so much about it. I fractured my cheekbone in training in pre-season, and by the time I got back, it was around about October, November, feeling fit, and it was at that time when you could move out and loan out with a window. And Gary Megson was manager. Stockport County were 6th or 7th in the championship at the time, and Gary Megson came up to watch me in a reserve game at Ibrox against Celtic. Didn't know he was watching me. Phoned my agent the next day and asked if he could get me on loan, and I jumped at 3 months of football. So I goes down, has 3 months on loan at Stockport. I wanted to stay, to be honest, but the manager wanted me back, so I came back in the January, and I played the cup final that year. We beat Celtic 1-0 to win the treble. So again, some good moments under him as well. Some Champions League games that involved me in, and so it wasn't all doom and gloom. But I just felt as though that from a manager, looking at it as a managerial aspect of it, I think he could have encouraged, gave more encouragement to the rest of the squad. And I told him that really when I left. I was disappointed with a lot of things that the way he'd acted. We'd won the cup final. Looking forward to pre-season, felt a big year for me. And then we Charlie phoned me, and he said, I'd just come back from Florida on my holiday. And Charlie phones me, he says, "Dale, have you got a letter?" And I says, "I've got a letter saying I have to report with the reserves. I'm no longer part of the first team squad." I'm like, "You kidding?" I says, "Did the manager phone you?" He went, "No." I says, "That's bang it all up. What's it all about?" He went, "Have you not got a letter?" I said, "No." I says, "Hold on, there's a postman there." So I goes out and there was a letter. Opened the letter and I says, "I've got the same letter." He was a dancer, he's not on his own. So that was me and him. We had to report with Bomber and John McGregor with the reserves a week later. But I just get my head down. Charlie got away, I think he went to Watford, Graham Taylor. I just walked away, and within a few weeks I was back in the first team environment. He brought me in and he said, "Look, your response to that, being told that has been terrific. You're now part of the squad again." I played in the League Cup, played in Champions League games. But the writing was on the wall. It was like the stronger team played. It was Giovanni and Claudio and me, Barry was emerging. It was a strong Rangers team. And the gaffer had clearly wanted to build his team around about Barry. Barry was one of the best players I've ever played. He's still of a generation, one of the best Scottish players we've produced. And I had the chance to leave in the January, so went to Toulouse, and Alan Jarez was an unbelievable legend of the game. And so I'd experienced that, and then I goes back to West Brom. I go to West Brom because Gary Megson gets a job. My relationship with him at Stockport was brilliant, and he said, "If I ever get to a proper club, you'll be my first signing." And he was good as his word. He brought me to West Brom, made me captain, and my time at West Brom was as good as any. I loved my time there. What a club and what a manager he was.
And then Ian McCoist was your final manager before he...
So the gaffer brought me back to Dundee United. Had a chance to go to Hearts. Dundee United offered me a 3-year deal. Hearts were offering me a 2-year deal. Charlie and a few of my pals were at Dundee United, and I spoke to the gaffer, and I thought it'd be a good thing to go to, and I enjoyed that. He's a good guy, Ian, as you know. And there was a wee bit of frustration that we probably felt we could have done better. I don't think that was an easier club for him to manage as well. At times, a few challenges going on, but we finished in Europe in the first season. lost 1-0 the cup final to Celtic, Allan Thompson's goal. And we'd improved things, but we still should have done a bit better. There was always that feeling. And then I left there, went to Millwall with Ray Wilkins and Nigel Spackman and Willie Donachie, and I loved that. But and then I finished with Coyle at St Johnstone.
You're 53, Derek. I mean, I'm sure at club level you feel you've got so much more to achieve, but people see you as a future Scotland manager. Do you see yourself as a future Scotland manager? Would that be an ambition, a dream when the time's right?
Yeah, I think I've got obviously certain things I want to do. I still, hopefully it comes across. I'm still as enthusiastic as I was when I started the job. I feel as I've got the benefit of my experience. And of course I'm loving my job here. So I think you've just got to deal with what's in front of you, and what's in front of us is try to keep the whole thing going here. But you know, if you could write a career for yourself, then it would involve managing Scotland. Of course it would. You know, I think we've got a great set of players, and we've got a good manager who's done so well in recent times. There's a lot of optimism about the Scotland job, and it's something I would like to do. Of course I would, but there's also other things I want to do as well, and there's still stuff to do here at Kilmarnock.
Fantastic chat, Derek, and I really appreciate your time, sir.
No problem.
Thank
Anytime.
you.
Thanks, Derek.
Cheers.
Cheers.